Thank you so much and welcome to our panel session this afternoon. We've themed our discussion Hear Her Voice, and I do hope that the themes that we talk about this afternoon will generate a lot more conversation after we leave the beach house. My name's Ruth Stubbs and I'm the CEO of iProspect in Asia Pacific and the chair of One at Dentsu Aegis, which is a program we've developed to support diversity, inclusion and innovation in our region, but it's also part of a global initiative. So before I invite the ladies up, the headline is that there is a new voice of the female entrepreneur. She's creating business out of necessity. Technology has enabled her to change the traditional roles of women in emerging markets, breaking down barriers and borders. Why should we care? Because in 2030, close to 80% of the global middle class will live outside the Western world. So we need to prioritize our business for the future and for the digital economy. So what we've learned through some research that we don't really have time to talk about today, but will become available to everybody. It can't be ignored, what we found. We were quite surprised. But emerging markets are home, obviously, to the poorest and most disadvantaged people on the planet. However, the role of technology is empowering a new vertical, motivated by necessity and lacking legacy. So it's this confluence that will be one of the biggest disruptors to our business as we know it. That's why we're having the conversation today, and that's why we'll be pursuing the conversation after today. Cue the video.
Really for women, we can't sort of like look at a goal and say just shoot straight for it, quite unlike the men because of all the other things that we have in our lives. We actually have to go towards our goal in a very zigzag manner. So you kind of like have to go to this part, you know, accomplish this thing and go to that part and accomplish that.
I do think that if I had known then what I know now, I think I would have been a little bit more cautious.
I think we just need more role models. The moment the media starts putting attention on women, showcasing more women role models, you know, for the younger generation, you want to look up on the stage and say, I identify with that. That woman looks like me, she talks like me, she sounds like me, and she could do it. I can do it too.
So that's just a snippet of what we have, and again, this is early stage for us, but the conversation is definitely going on, and the women you'll meet this afternoon have been having that conversation in many different ways for a long time. One of the things they have in common is their passion for supporting other women and help them realize their potential. We believe it's critical to our success in the digital economy, but it's also in our hands as an industry to decide how we respond to what we found in our research and what we find when we listen to these women. So let me introduce you to the panel, if I could ask the ladies to come up. Just to save a little bit of time. Okay, I'm going to do it in random order. So, ladies, when I say your name, wave. But you can see from the pictures behind. So, Catherine Balasam-Schwaber. Catherine is the Chief Content Officer at Mattel with a long and illustrious background in content. Catherine was at NBC Universal prior to Mattel, and we'll hear from Catherine on some of the initiatives that they've been working on at Mattel. Claudia Colafajo. Claudia, luckily, was able to join us from her seat on the on the glass panel this afternoon, which is an amazing opportunity for us to hear a little bit about what Claudia has uncovered over the last couple of days. Claudia is one of our network's most senior women. As president of Denso Aegis Network for Latin America, Claudia is going to, as I said, talk about what she has seen over the last few days on the glass jury. But more importantly, Latin America is an emerging region that we have seen so many similarities in what we've uncovered through our CCS research on female entrepreneurs out of emerging markets. Next, I will introduce Joanna Catalano, sitting right in the middle. Joanna is currently the president of an organization called Female Founders, which is a non-for-profit we partner with in Singapore. We work with female founders on research to help drive advocacy and policy in Singapore around female founder funding and encouraging women to become more proactive in starting their own businesses. And Joanna's second hat is head of creative agency at Google for Asia Pacific. So next I will introduce Sabina Goss. Sabina is another strong and admired woman from the Denso Aegis Network as the CEO of Isobar France. Sabina has had an amazing story getting to the role that she's filling right now, and we'll hear more about that. Anna Bishop-Rihig is right there. Anna leads Marcoms for Facebook emerging markets and cross-border products. Anna's role focuses on developing and scaling solutions at Facebook built especially for the needs of business owners across emerging markets, which is absolutely critical to our empowerment of these women. Anna's background's also really interesting in that she has a background in entrepreneur programs and she's an anthropologist, studied in Africa, but she lives in London right now, which is probably just as wild. Anyway, the last lady that I would like to introduce you to, second last lady, is Kamakshi Sivaramakrishnan. And Kamakshi is the founder and CEO of Drawbridge, recognized, and don't be embarrassed, recognized as the fastest growing private company in marketing and advertising in 2015, which is absolutely spectacular. Drawbridge is also the fastest growing female-led business, no surprises there. And for this and many other things, Kamakshi was awarded the 2015 Women of Vision Award for Technology and Entrepreneurship in 2015, which is pretty impressive. And I'm so glad that you said yes to come today. And I'd also finally like to introduce you to our moderator, Mari O'Riordan. Mari is editor-in-chief right now of John Brown Media. But Mari's been working with women's magazines for over 20 years, most recently as the editor-in-chief of Marie Claire UK. And I asked Mari to moderate the panel today because Mari is very experienced in getting people to speak about what they really want to say, which is what we're hoping for right now as we launch into the panel.
Okay. Shall we swap places?
We shall. You've got your mic.
I think I'm mic'd up. I think I can hear my voice. I had the great pleasure this morning of dropping into the Palais and catching Anna Winter's talk. I don't know if any of you caught it also. And there were many similarities to what she was talking about and what we're about to discuss. But there were a couple of takeouts which I thought I would share with you and to kick off our own discussion. She was talking about disruption and how creativity plays such an important role in disrupting the current media economy. And she said it's important to dare to be different. She also said that we live in an age of authenticity. Authenticity is valued, so it's very important to be yourself. And her final takeout, which again is really what today is all about, she said it's very important to make interesting friends. And that's what we're here to do today. Okay, so as Ruth has said, the research from the Denso project suggests that women are disrupting the economy by leaving traditional employment roles to become self-employed entrepreneurs. I'd like to ask Anna to start us off. How is Facebook playing a key role in this story, Anna?
Perfect. Before I answer, I actually just want to say thank you to Ruth, to Mary, everyone for bringing us together. I walk around at Cannes, the Global Festival of Creativity, and I often think two big things are missing from that word global, right? One is women, and one is regions outside of the US and Western Europe. So I'm so glad that we're here and really talking about this.
Here, here.
And I also want to twist your question just a little bit. So you asked, what is Facebook doing to empower women in emerging markets and small entrepreneurs? And I actually think the more important question is the opposite. How are we inspired by what's happening on the ground, by the innovation, the business creation, the economic impact that's being driven in emerging markets? How do we take that and really scale it? So our goal is to understand first, and then to amplify by improving our products, by improving our programs, and better serving that population. So we've spent 2 years kind of crisscrossing the globe, really understanding what small businesses are looking for in terms of a digital and a mobile presence in emerging markets. And we are finding something really interesting, which is that we, Facebook, are way behind. We look to them and these small entrepreneurs, micro businesses, you might call them, and they're incredibly sophisticated in how they're using our platform and others to drive their business growth. And we're actually learning from them, taking those insights and launching them globally. So I'll give an example from Kenya, where I lived and worked for 2 years before coming to Facebook. Last March, I took a group of executives back, and our goal was really just to listen, learn, take those insights back and build to them. But one woman really stood out. Her name was Isabella, and she started a company in Nairobi called Fashion 254. And this company was building luxury or high-end handbags and dresses for women across Kenya. And she started this, she's 26 years old today, but she started this as a side hustle, so a small business, which is very, very common across all emerging markets. Ran it for 2 years, kind of on the side, and then realized with digital and with mobile, she could scale and actually become her full-time job. And it was interesting, I think in 2015, that same group of executives probably met with 100 or more business executives, including CMOs from the top companies. And they all said that Isabella was the most sophisticated Facebook advertiser they'd ever met. And I'll walk you through kind of each step and her marketing funnel and what she did that was so inspiring to us. But she started, as a lot of small entrepreneurs do, with a Facebook profile, her own personal profile, and then just started selling here and there. So she might post a photo and her friend would comment on it. Hey, where did you get that? How much is it? And the transaction often would then go to the comment thread. So she kind of saw this insight, tapped into it, and created a Facebook page for her business. And with that, she could then launch product catalogs and images, and it really grew and grew from there. But things really took off when she started an Instagram page, was able to tap into this image-based, really rich platform. And the women she serviced with this business absolutely loved it. Her business was growing. Now it came time to, like, how do you fulfill those orders? So that's when she would turn to messaging, which is another trend that we're seeing across all emerging markets. So fulfillment would actually happen over WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, WeChat, Line, whatever it is. And it's interesting. It's the marketplace that we're used to in emerging markets, a bit of haggling, the back and forth that's so integral to buying, has actually moved on to messaging platforms, which emulates that same behavior. So then when it came to delivery and payment, cash is king. This is something we also see across many, many different countries. The dress would be ordered, it would actually be delivered by a motorbike deployed by Isabella, and then the consumer would pay in cash, and the transaction is done. In Kenya, there's another method, M-Pesa, which is a mobile money platform that about a third of the country's GDP runs through every day. So that's another alternative, and every country is a little bit different. But you can just see how Isabella has taken the traditional marketing funnel and actually moved it all to mobile. She's doing all of this from her $30 Android smartphone.
Wow.
I mean, it's just phenomenal. We are absolutely inspired by what she's doing, and what we really want to do is take that insight and help businesses of all size learn to benefit from that leanness, the scrappiness, and the innovation that's happening.
That's such a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing that, Anna. Claudia, I imagine that you're seeing similar patterns of how technology is enabling this disruption in Brazil particularly, and in Latin America in general. Perhaps you could enlighten us with some more anecdotes?
Well, can you listen? Yeah? I was during the jury trying to find out some data that I could really entertain you guys in here. So I got, sorry, I'm opening here my notes. But actually, I was very surprised to find out that we do have 6 million women actually entrepreneur in Brazil, which is a very big number. It is for an association, is a research. And with that, it's 80% of the total women in Brazil. So it's a big opportunity for us to, help them to, start their business. However, the thing that is very interesting is that while the entrepreneur male are educated and have annual revenues that goes beyond $100,000, the female one are really doing this for survival. They are more low classes, not educated, and not prepared to run their business. Therefore, they are much more in risk to fail. So I think that's the more or less what I got. I still have the age from 18 to 30 something. That's what I have. Self-esteem is one of the things we have to address if we want to help them. Also, we need to help give her support because the family is not giving her that. Actually, she is the one that is going to open the things to help the family. It's the other way around. Also, the culture is very machist, male-driven, and of course, that she needs also to come back home after her job or her small business and still do everything at home. So more or less, that's the data that I have from Brazil, which I think very much is what we have elsewhere, I suppose, so far.
When we spoke before, Claudia, you said to me that you cry every day listening to stories of gender inequality.
Oh, now that is the glass category. Okay, I will entertain more now. So first of all, just want to say the president of the jury, Madeleine Dinono, is right over there. She works for Gina Institute, so she's very much focused on female issues on the Hollywood market. If I'm some mistake, you shout and help me out in here, Madeleine. So one of the things that we found out in this jury is that we are calling the jury the tissue jury, because the glass category is the second year that they started this project in Palais. And basically, they are fighting against or recognizing work that are fighting problems of injustice and prejudice and gender diversity. So we found out in this year that there's a lot of, I would say, themes that they are working on, and can give you some flavor on that on the short list. I cannot mention anything that is not in the short list. Sorry for that. But I do have a lot of material on that. They are fighting for some very specific cultural habits. And one of them, for example, is the marriage of a 9-year-old in Lebanon. So it's one of the campaigns that got a glass yesterday. So it's one of the issues we still face in the world, children marriage. Second one, for example, is in China, where women with 27 is too old if they are not married. So it's a shame for the parents not having her married by that age. So these kind of things, makes we believe that we are still in the beginning of the work we should do. Okay, there's such, important things to change, and not about saying any of the violence, domestic violence, for example. We did have 2 campaigns on acid attacks on the face of women. So people there are completely transformed in a bad way because a companion, boyfriend, whatever, throw acid in the face of women. So this is something still very huge in some pieces of the world. So this kind of thing, made us cry all the time. And to rank the problems was very tough, because all the problems are very important. So how can we give the first, second, third position when we do have such important matters to discuss? So that's more like what we found out in there. I hope you like the short list and also the winner, the big one. I invited you to take a look. I think we need to be, voice people that are going to, help these problems to be known in the rest of the world. There's a lot of things here we were not aware of, at least not me and the group, very specific for some places. But there's a lot of things that are common. They are just portrayed in India. They are just portrayed in Lebanon, but they are inside our culture as well. Okay, so I think it's a very interesting category that we should embrace. I hope in 5 years' time we don't need to discuss the matter, but knowing us as a civilization so far, I don't believe that going to happen. So what can I say?
Because these women are our clients of the future, I think everybody here and everybody in our business has to be proactive about supporting these women. And Sabina, you've been talking about an interesting initiative that Isobar has. I mean, Claudia has one called the Global Circle in Boston, but Isobar has something called She Says, which is a creative way of driving this sort of diversity. Can you talk to us about that, Sabina?
Yeah, exactly. We are talking here basically about diversity in the emerging markets, but I think it's unfortunately a big issue even in developed markets. So do you know, I found this morning, this crazy number. Do you know that only 3% of creative directors are women? Only 3%. It's crazy, no?
Shocking. But why does that not surprise the audience?
Yeah, very, very surprising. So Isobar has been partner with She Says for 3 years now, I think. So She Says is an international network for empowering women and a global creative network for women. And it's like basically it's like driving female talents into the industry. So it's about finding and promoting new work possibilities and opportunities for young women. It's like making open briefs. They relaunched She Says Award, which is the only award for women in the UK. Isobar do something similar in France. I make part of the Women Crystal, which is a special award from women to women. Is it enough? Probably not. So I think we can do more in education, for example. So Isobar France is supporting high schools. We bring young students to the agency. We try to give them their first job. So this is a good way to support them. And I think we can also support them creatively. I'm thinking about what Isobar Poland created last year. It's a special program dedicated to women called Freedom Tattoo. It's about covering the ex-prisoner tattoos with the new ones, better-looking ones, to help them to, to be better perceived by the society, to find a job more easily. So even creatively, I think our job is to promote this diversity. And then from my personal experience, I'm proud to work for a company that acts like a catalyst of a change in this creative industry. Some of you know it, I'm Russian. So I started to work in Russia, in Moscow, and then I came to France for personal reasons. And now I'm head of Isobar in France, which is a really unusual situation in France, in fact. So if I'm here today, because I met people that trusted me, that gave me confidence, that gave me the opportunity to do things, to express myself, and this is exactly what I try to do every day in my work. I came here with a girl from my team who is Solène. She's only 30. She's in charge of all the social media in Isobar France, and she's head of social stack and into Dentsuages network in France. So this is excellent success story, and we have to continue to do this every day.
I love the tattoo story. That's such a classic female solution to a female problem. It's really fantastic. I mean, we are supporting women in education and we're mentoring them, we hope, in the workplace. But could we start even earlier, Catherine? What about toys? Can you talk about the role of Mattel and how Mattel can employ innovation to unleash this female entrepreneur at an earlier age?
Yes. Well, it's interesting this year, which I'm sure many of you know because everybody follows the fate of Barbie, is the year that Barbie became a multicultural rock star, fashionista, and also changed her body. And I think that in a way, we are approaching the future of lifting up girls and children by going back to the basics and thinking about the way that children play and the way that they behave. There's a lot of talk about how children play less because they move to technology sooner. So part of it is being able to have the knowledge that we have about how children behave. Children still play. They have the same play patterns pretty much that they've always had. And, you know, boys love to build and destroy. Girls love to nurture. Whether a girl is able to hold in her hands a doll that looks like her or looks like her best friend or her babysitter is important because she can understand that the world is bigger than herself, which is actually one of the things that we find coming up with young girls a lot now, especially because of the global unboxing phenomenon, to be honest, that they see videos from all over the world of different kinds of girls and different kinds of kids that gives them, especially coming from a Western purview, an idea that the world is bigger than your town. But based on the way that they play, girls might nurture a doll, they might nurture a car. We're less likely to take the car out of the hands of a girl and replace it with a doll also, which means that they have an expanded universe to play with. The other thing I would say is with technology, one of the recent things that we found is that by the time kids reach age 7, the vast majority of them are making their own content. So if you think about the idea that in most places, whether you're using a mobile device or a camera or what you have at your disposal, the idea that you would be able to tell stories about your own life and share them is something that actually gives me hope for the future of a blended world, because everyone becomes a creator. And I think inherent in being a creator means it's more likely we'll have female creative leads at agencies down the road because you start so young, but that you also see all your peers creating content, which I think is important. And that while technology certainly has its drawbacks at a young age, it also enhances our ability to connect more globally, which I think is really critical. But from our perspective, we're definitely focused on being able to make our physical product reflect global culture, and you know, we work with a lot of organizations to get those dolls into the hands of girls who look like those dolls, so they can imagine whatever possibility comes in their future. And you know, just this week we also launched the Barbie Coder doll, which has
Cool.
Yes. She's very hip, and she even comes with real code. It's very important. But you know, I think it's just imagining that we're bringing these dolls into current culture, so that it isn't a throwback to a time when we imagined that you were playing in an isolated world.
Thank you. So, Joanna, you're a bit of an expert in female-founded businesses. So in this blended world that we all dream of, with the Barbie coder in one corner and the tattoo maker in the other one, perhaps you could talk to us about the differences, really, between the male-founded business and the female-founded business, and if our dreams will become reality sooner than we hope.
It's a lot of forecasting you want me to do.
Yeah.
I first wanted to just quickly, to your point about the Indian Barbie, I think it's interesting. My daughter is not Indian, no surprise. And she had the Barbie and she got the Indian Barbie. And I thought it was fascinating that she couldn't tell the difference between the two. I knew it was an Indian Barbie, and she thought it was just another Barbie. So, just kind of cool to see. So, female founders and kind of what we see and why we kind of got into this is, I'm based in Singapore. Singapore, it's a hub for Asia. It's a hotbed of innovation, and we saw that actually Singapore is lagging. So if you compare it to a country like Israel, similar size, a lot less successful startups coming out, and specifically female startups. And I wanted to kind of also give you some numbers. We like numbers. We found, and one of the things we found was there was no comprehensive research, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but we did know that companies with female CEOs actually receive only 3% of VC money. Now, why should we care about this? Let me give you a few other stats. The first is that women entrepreneurs actually report an average of annual sales of 9.1 million versus 8.4 million. When it comes to revenue, VC-backed female-led companies actually bring in 12% higher revenue than male-led. And the last stat, again, very interesting to me, is that businesses with a female executive team are more likely to have higher valuations at both the first and the third stage. So we were like, what is going on, right? And we did a kind of market survey. Again, Singapore is a small market. There was a lot of women stuff happening. And we said, we don't want to be a connector. There were a lot of organizations that were out there connecting. We wanted to be a change agent. We really wanted to move the ecosystem. And we said, how are we going to do this? And it kind of came down to 3 pillars. The first is research. As I mentioned, there was no in-depth research that focused on Singapore and what the issues were at hand. And we felt before we could move from there, we actually needed to have that baseline. We needed to do a diagnosis so that we could then move on to the second pillar, which was advocacy. So on the research, it was just an uncanny and unbelievable coincidence that Dentsu Aegis had done this research, has the CCC panel, and we thought, what an amazing opportunity for partnership. And now, actually, as we speak, our jointly defined bespoke research is going to market. So we will, in September, we will actually have the results from that, and we'll be able to talk to what's happening in Singapore specifically. If we wanted to drive advocacy, and advocacy we see as relates to a few specific areas. One is the government, never an easy thing to tackle in Singapore especially. The second is the media. So one thing that really annoyed me was I found the same 2 entrepreneurs were getting covered in the media all the time, and I thought, this is nuts. There have to be more entrepreneurs out there, and there definitely are. You saw in the short clip a woman by the name of Norma Sitt. There are a few things I love about Norma. One is she has 2 fairly grown-up kids, high school aged. She came from many years with corporate experience. This isn't what we typically see when we look at VC startups coming out of the Valley or actually out of most other places. They tend to be younger and fresher, and Norma would actually say that. But she did her kind of corporate experience, and then she said, I need to go and tackle a major problem. And what was that problem? Well, in Singapore, there are a lot of foreign domestic workers, right? There's a huge unbanked population in Southeast Asia that can't send money home. And she said, I'm going to take this on. And she founded this company, New Money. It's super cool. Definitely go and check it out. It's very tech enabled. So please, go and see what she's doing. So media is one of the, kind of key areas where we're focusing. We've put together a comprehensive speaking guide that looks at women across the ecosystem, be that in VCs, entrepreneurs themselves, and sort of supporters of the ecosystem. And we said, if you are covering, please reach out to these women. Similarly, we said anyone who's organizing any type of conference that is talking about startups, we expect to see panels that have 50% women and not the same women all the time. And we're now starting to track these statistics. And government, a little bit tougher not to crack. We've started those conversations, and I think we've been less proactive because we really want to go with here are the 3 things that need to be done, and we feel like we need the research to do that. And the last piece for us is the advocacy pillar. And you kind of heard Roshni speak about it. There's a lot of money that corporates are spending in terms of you hear Unilever and Coca-Cola, and there's the Foundry, and they're supporting these startup businesses. And we thought, how can we better connect some of these young female leaders with the talent and the experience that sits within in the corporates? And how do we help the corporates actually learn and potentially acquire these businesses? Which, if you read the Dan research, you'll see that there is actually a lot of learning that can take place in the opposite direction. So we've launched a mentor program. Our first cohort just launched with Accenture. We have a very senior group of mentors, both men and women, who have taken on these entrepreneurs. And they have to, because when these women go for funding, they get asked outrageous questions. For example, when are you going to have a baby? And there's just a huge gap in terms of their ability to succeed and to get through, especially at that Series A stage. And we did a panel with VCs, 4 VCs in Singapore last year, and they actually spoke quite candidly about the lookalike bias, about the fact that they tend to be a little bit more apprehensive and not as proactive at looking at female-led or female-founded businesses. So this is kind of what we're up to, and I do believe that you will see some positive returns. I'm not going to say exactly what, but we're already starting to see the tide change. So,
thank you. I'd like to talk to Kamakshi now. She's at the coalface of exactly what Joanna's just been talking about. She's out with VCs all the time. She's just received her 3rd round of funding, which she's going to tell you about. But just in our short conversation before we came on stage, you told me several anecdotes, all of which epitomize what we're talking about today. So first of all, maybe you can talk about what happened in your most recent round of funding with your EA.
Right. I think I'm going to share.
Oh, that's not on, I don't think.
I'll probably share a redeeming story of an entrepreneur who has gone through 3 major rounds of financing between Series A, B, and C most recently. Between these 3 rounds, Drawbridge has raised close to $46 million of financing from 2 of the biggest venture capitalists on this planet, Sequoia Capital and Kleiner Perkins. And to sort of add a twist to the story, I'm a single founder story of the company. So typically companies are founded by 2 or more. There's a co-founder along the way. I remember at the time of founding this company, sharing my sort of venture with a close friend of mine who I also consider a mentor, who has crossed the entrepreneur journey many times over. So he and his co-founder said, "You're about to embark on a story that replicates something like that of a single mom. We have 2 of us to take care of this company. You are the story of a single mom who's starting off this company, if you may." So I totally come across multiple experiences being a member of the Silicon Valley about horror stories that women have gone through in terms of, the questions that they're asked, the circumstances that they're faced with, the biases that they encounter at the time of capital raising. I'd like to probably be that story of hope that in my situation, in my circumstance, I face none of the above. I understand that I probably am more an exception than the norm. I probably would like to explain it in the following way. I don't know if there is a really good explanation that is statistically coherent and consistent across a broad range of samples. This is an anecdotal experience at best, but if I were to correlate it with my experience, I'd say that my single point of focus was always sort of the meritocracy of sort of my personal situation, the merit and value and the substantive value of what is it that I have to contribute, say, and the ideation of the company that I'm about to form. At no point did I ever focus on the fact that I was the only woman in the room. In fact, for the longest time in my entire career, I'm used to the fact that I'm the only woman in the room. That hasn't changed even now. And in the financing round as well, between my Series A, B, and C, in a room full of 15, 20 partners, which is intimidating for most men, forget about women. Most men certainly piss their pants off without anyone noticing this. Anyway, so the point is that I think I was speaking to you earlier, where she said that her mother basically shared with her that what glass ceiling are you talking about? I did not experience a glass ceiling when she was two of the only women doctors in the hospital that she was working in. I think I was probably inspired by my mother in a similar fashion. My mother didn't even go to college. But she, growing up in India, in an emerging country where you can be subject to all kinds of biases, she's always made me feel that if you want to try it, you should give yourself the best shot to go ahead and do it. And I think that was fundamentally inculcated in me in such a strong way that the fact that I was the only woman in the room and there are these 15 intimidating figures who are supposed to write down this check of $20 million for me, never figured. I wholeheartedly focused on the substantive value of what is it that I was talking to them about, as a result of which they are investing in me as the founder and as the entrepreneur. This is a story I realized after I closed multiple rounds of financing. Certainly there is the idea and the business opportunity, the market size that is being invested into. But most importantly, the decision of investment is happening on the entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur is the one who's realizing the success of that story. So it is indeed noteworthy that me as a single female founder has been able to do this much. There have been many more female founders who have gone ahead of me and have done much bigger, better things than what I have. I'm certainly in recognition of that. But I also recognize the fact that I'm one among those who is also in the sort of very small set of women entrepreneurs who are going ahead and making this happen. We are about a 150-person company right now. In the second level of management, we are about 50% women. One of them is standing right there, Bhumika, who heads up global business development for us. I think this is something that we actively encourage in the company in terms of how people are able to get inspired by my story. My story is sort of, in some ways, atypical in the following sense. I don't replicate the story of Isabella, who has a consumer-facing idea that is centered around something that is close to women's hearts, a line of fashion. I'm a purebred technologist. I play in a man's field. And as a result of that, I think I heard a remark in the video clip that you played up front. There is truly no one who sounded like, not many people who sounded like me, talked like me, looked like me. And so the ability to find inspiration within my own self and sort of remembering my mother's humble advice to me was something that has stood me in good stead. And I try to replicate that in ways in which, even as a small company, we are able to actively encourage greater women participation, not only at the sort of the management level, but certainly at sort of the number of engineers that we bring on board. So I'm proud to say that about 35% of the women or 35% of the engineers in our team, of about 55 engineers, are women. And many a times we hear this argument about there are just not enough women. We certainly are very actively looking for. We just don't find enough of a sample set to select off of. I think there is a classic sort of chicken and egg problem here in terms of women looking for sort of people, again, going back to my sort of previous analogy of looking like them, talking like them, feeling like them. And to your point earlier, I think it's time for some positive discrimination here. And if there is a way in which we can actively propel women to create some level of equanimity and give them a fair chance, that's how you're going to break this sort of this unhealthy sort of cycle of this chicken and egg problem where there aren't just enough number of women to choose from. And I think it's time that we challenge ourselves and truly ask, how is it that we are going to break this problem? This problem doesn't not only exist sort of in engineering, coding, and developers. This certainly exists in venture capitalists themselves and partners in VC firms. How many VC firms have a sizable number of women partners as a part of their partnership? Our investor, Sequoia Capital, I was just remarking to you, Murray, that they got their first women partner, a junior partner, for the first time earlier this year. So, and the classic argument that is put in front of people is there are just not enough women. We do want to give them a shot. It is a priority for us, but we do not find enough women. I think women are there. Sometimes there is a certain amount of so the impetus that is necessary for those of us who might be that little extra coy. And that's sort of my challenge that I put to myself, my team, my investors as well. It's time to break that chicken and egg cycle. Let's bring in some of that positive discrimination.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Just before we round up, I'd just like to thank Kamakshi and the rest of the panel. That's a wonderful story. You're a very enlightening and inspirational character. But I think I totally agree about positive discrimination or affirmative action, which has worked very well for diversity in all ways apart from the gender inequality. So perhaps we can learn from these women in the emerging markets who at the end of the day will be the bosses and the leaders of the future and, as I said at the beginning, our clients. So I hope we will all use the rest of this afternoon to reach out to one another and think of innovative ways where we can share our knowledge. But I'd like now to hand back to our host, Ruth, who's got some rather exciting announcement.
So thank you. And ladies, thank you so much. That was amazing and really, really enlightening. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's really in our hands how we respond to what we know. I mean, we knew this information. The CCS research has helped us uncover motivations for women in some of the poorest regions in the world. But there are so many similarities and so many connections that we can make in the way that we communicate to these women that are going to change the world for us. So it's really in our hands. And I think it's clear that as an organization and as an industry that we have a role in empowering these women. And I believe it needs to be an active role. So Dentsu Aegis Network has teamed up with Dentsu Ventures to literally support female founders in an initiative that we're announcing today. So launching in August, we're going to formalize a program aimed at recruiting, mentoring, and funding female-led tech-focused startups. We're starting this in the sub-region of Southeast Asia and creating a blueprint for us to roll out across the rest of our emerging markets. So in partnership with some amazing institutions, Joanna mentioned one in female founders, but we're partnering with institutions, foundations and associations. As I said, many we work with already. And what we'll do is we will recruit, mentor, and finally provide the opportunity to pitch for funding to Dentsu Ventures. Now, one of the biggest challenges for these women is understanding how to pitch, understanding what tools they need in order to put their case forward. And that is our commitment as Dentsu Aegis Network. And Dentsu Ventures will form the foundation of the funding panel on a demo day that we will line up for the end of this year. The recruiting will happen through our partnerships with She Means Business and a few other organizations that we're working with. And we'll hopefully bring some amazing innovation to the world. That's the goal. We'll put women in front of an opportunity to get funded with the right information, with the right tools, with the right message. And we hope with our key clients and the wider investment community and our industry at large, will help support these women that are really struggling to get the first round of funding, because that's all they need is a kickstart, and their businesses could, change the universe. Who knows? So that is official, and we hope that we'll be telling you more about this and the success that we've had in Cannes next year. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for everything that you've contributed. Questions? Anyone have any questions? Because we're going to be joining you for something to eat and a beverage. So you can either ask now or as we're hanging around.
Classic female, not putting their hands up.
Yes, no, come on, come on.
The disconnect between having political leaders, female leaders in Israel and India, even in the UK, not yet in America, but not long to wait. How come there's a disconnect between business and politics when actually the rough and tumble in politics is even worse?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I do have an anecdote. We were at the ASEAN chapter of the World Economic Forum 3 weeks ago. We sat in a room with the prime ministers and presidents of 10, well, there was only, I think, 5 on stage, 10 of these emerging markets, all men, of course, and they were talking about the disruption to the emerging markets that technology will play. They didn't have any answers. They didn't have any solutions. As we moved into the panel rooms, there were ministers of education, ministers of health and finance on panels, talking about the fact that there are many more ladies than gentlemen in these emerging markets, and maybe the interweb should be looked at more closely. So there is a problem because there's 625 million people just across those 10 markets in ASEAN, and the majority of these people are women, and the majority of these people are under 35 years of age. So they don't have the answers, although all of the people that I mentioned were men leading the conversation. It's the people that are setting the policy, the people that are driving the advocacy. They need to see the proof, and then maybe something will change. But emerging markets are steeped in very, very thick and strong cultures that makes it very, very difficult to break out. So they're anomalies that you're mentioning, the women that led some of these great nations. But hopefully, if we're all working hard enough to change that paradigm, then...
And yet, actually, talking about proof, studies show that in the S&P, companies run by women make a better return on capital. Yeah. They create more total shareholder returns. On every metric, they actually do better because they don't do groupthink and they dare to be different and to challenge. Yeah. And yet, there aren't more of them.
Exactly. We need to be, I guess, amplifying what we're finding. And you're right, we need the proof. You can't go in there with an anecdote. You need to say, statistically significant findings prove that X, Y, Z. And we can't just settle for a quota system, but we'd be happy with one. They don't even have that. So that's what we need. Yeah. You're 100%.
Thank you. I think, Ruth, you also answered it in your opening speech when you reminded us that close to 80% of the global middle class will live outside the developed world. So it is happening, and the Dan report demonstrates that it's happening on a very ground level. So it is actually only a matter of time. So that's why we've got to be ahead of the curve.
So, Catherine, you talked about proof. We were talking about sales and proof. Can you talk about the success of the new Barbie line in terms of sales from a retail standpoint? Has the retail community supported you domestically and globally? Is the United States outselling the rest of the world? And just, can you talk a little bit, because it is about proof of concept that consumers really did want this.
Okay, that work? Well, I think there are two things that are interesting there. So while the Barbie, the evolution of the Barbie in all shapes, sizes, and colors has been successful globally, without doubt. The other thing that's interesting is that we launched the first line of superhero girl dolls this year with the DC superhero girls. And they are sold out all the time, consistently since they have launched. That we can't keep enough product on shelf to satisfy the demand and the interest in the market for strong female characters that you can use to play, and I think that demonstrates. I mean, we've had phenomenal support from the retail community around the world for both lines, and demand for more product like it. That girls are changing, and they want to play with dolls that live in their imagination, and this is what they imagine their future will be, which is they can be anything, act how they want. I mean, within reason, depending on where you live, but I mean, I think the idea is that this is a catalyst also for change in the world. If you grow up thinking that you can achieve whatever you have in your imagination from the start.
And if anyone's interested in the research, that we'll make it available to through, I guess, Nate. Nate will make it available. And please, if we've got one round ready to go, and then the next round is highlights, but it's not in a pretty package. So if it's immediate, let me know, and then Nate will send it to you. So thanks so much.